Peace is divine, but men have misused its name. The earth is one constituent of the universe, but because men see it underneath heaven, they regard heaven as its antagonist. For division is the first function of nature. But just as the two eyes see two images, which are made one in the optic thalamus, so should man forget antagonism and create unity in himself. Peace is the reconciliation of heaven and earth. But to say this to the worldly is a waste of breath, for the worldly man does not know the meaning of either his heaven or his earth. His body came from earth, and his spirit from heaven, desiring to know earth. But the body has denied the spirit which gives it life. So man looks for God in the starry sky, and makes the intellectual mistake of dividing the spirit of heaven from the spirit of earth. He aspires to that which he has already, and is astonished at not finding it. So his hunger remains insatiable, like that of the damned. The fire hidden within him stirs his anger, and that which should have united separates. Thus the antagonism increases, and the only gainers are the personal instincts, which set themselves up and revolt against the sense of reality. But resistance to the current of destiny always creates eddies of disturbance, and suffering comes because personal wills prevail against the will to the light. Man says, "War is horrible, let us make peace." But in saying so, he surrenders to the most powerful, and the name of peace is prostituted, for the peace of mere satisfaction and rest is the inertia of a corpse. True peace is a continual combat of give and take between the mortal and the eternal, in perfect justice and without violence. Man has his heaven within him, and if the human heaven can attract the divine heaven, then they mix as water with water, and the kingdom of heaven is established in man. The opposition to this union comes from the aggressiveness of the personal instincts, for the separate wants separateness and fears the universal. As an animal, man is part of the dualism of nature, and his aggressiveness is the infernal aspect of the fire incarnate in nature. Without this fire there is no combat and no life. The animal instincts express their various characteristics, and each animal species represents one of them. But without being responsible for its aggressiveness, since it is bound by the law of nature's dualism. Man, at the highest point in nature, received the gift of consciousness of self, and his brain, having the gift of reason, began to reason about it. He formulated his own law of good and evil according to his own concept of being a subject to the relative and utilitarian conditions of dualism. And thus he created sin, which was relative to his own law. But consciousness of life submits to the law of life, and both these are cosmic. The law of life is the law of Genesis, and at each stage of its evolution, this Genesis develops a corresponding consciousness. For each stage of development of any organ or creature is the incarnation of a cosmic consciousness. Man includes all the stages within himself, but the last stage on earth is peculiar to him, for it is the building of his immortal being, the consciousness of his inner self as a member of the cosmic man. This is a function of a higher world. It is the quest for unity. In a man who has reached this stage, everything changes, his aim, his mental attitude, and his law. For man's arbitrary law becomes subordinated to the law of the higher realm, in which the only evil is that which prevents unity. The dualistic tendency that most men follow is a hell that he must avoid. His aim and method now is to escape from complementaries, to reach non-division, non-opposition, and mediation. The eternal and the mortal are an opposition which seems irreconcilable only to the intellect. For the action of Lucifer, which separates them, brings in also of necessity the mediator. But a mediator cannot act from too far outside. If he observes only from a distance, his judgment will not bring peace, and the deeper motives of disagreement will outlast the apparent reconciliation. The true mediator is one who identifies himself with both the opposing tendencies and reconciles them in himself, so that their conflict becomes in him a conscious experience without hatred or violence. Consciousness, the permanent witness of individual experiences, can become the mediator between the eternal and the personal, between heaven and the terrestrial hell. He who can recognize in himself the instincts which relate him to the lowest, yet without groveling in them, and become aware, but without pride, of that which relates him to the highest, has found the means of concord, for he has conceived the natures of the two antagonists, and become their mediator. Peace is a mystical ferment, and its radiance is contagious. It is a prayer which contains its own answer. It is an offering on which the divine descends.